Hello, my name is Ezenwa Ungbunu, and the topic of this discussion is Principles of Sustainable Weight Loss. Now, weight management is a serious concern in our modern society. From the 1970s onwards, there's been a dramatic increase in the rates of overweight and obesity. For example, in rich countries such as Britain, Australia, the United States, over 2/3 of the population is overweight and over 1/3 of the population is obese. And it's an intensifying process. A shocking study by the British National Obesity Forum estimates that by the year 2050, over half of the population in Britain will be obese, and that was a conservative estimate. And this problem is not isolated to rich countries alone. It's a global epidemic. An interesting study by the Overseas Development Institute found that there are over 900 million overweight people in developing countries. That's twice the number of overweight people in rich countries. So clearly, this global epidemic of overweight and obesity cuts across all income strata, affecting both rich and poor. And it's a global health concern because being overweight or obese puts one at higher risk of a raft of chronic degenerative conditions such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, fatty liver disease, and on and on. It's quite a long list of conditions. So with that being said, what are the fundamental drivers of this runaway weight gain that leads to overweight and obesity? Well, in the conventional understanding, it might be described in terms of weak wills, a lack of self-control, a lack of self-discipline, people simply eating too much and exercising too little. And in the debate, there is a high degree of condescension. And they use terms like gluttony, slothfulness, laziness, greed. Well, in this talk, I would like to explain that weight management over the long term is largely a subconscious process. In your body, you have processes that are under conscious control and processes that are subconscious. For example, manipulating my skeletal muscles is under voluntary control, but my heart rate or digestion are processes that occur subconsciously below the level of my awareness. And similarly, weight management over the long term is a subconscious process. The fundamental disruption that leads to runaway weight gain that causes overweight and obesity is a hormonal imbalance. Now, before I go into the details of this hormonal imbalance, one can understand that weight management is subconscious intuitively. With many people who are struggling with weight, there is a desire to lose weight, but they are unable to take the necessary steps to lose that weight and be healthier. And the conscious brain is the seat of that desire, but their behavior is driven not by the conscious brain, is driven by subconscious processes. It's driven by biochemistry. So it's the biochemistry that drives behavior. The conscious brain is the seat of desire, but there is a disconnect between the biochemistry and the conscious brain, and you now have dissonance, and it could manifest as self-loathing. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself, and that happens quite often. So the solution to weight management issues is to reconcile both the conscious brain with the underlying biochemistry, that is this hormonal imbalance. So what is this hormonal imbalance? It involves a hormone called leptin. Weight management is a complex process involving an interplay of several hormones, but leptin is the key player in weight management over the long term. Leptin is a hormone produced by fat cells. We have fat stores both under the skin, that is called subcutaneous fat, and then we also have deeper fat stores within the abdomen called visceral or abdominal fat. There are also additional fat stores, but those are the two primary ones. And fat cells secrete a hormone called leptin. And leptin enters circulation and goes to the brain, and it is interpreted by a region in the brain called the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is is in the subconscious part of the brain. What leptin communicates is the level of energy that is in the body, the level of energy stores, because fat is simply stored energy. So when we increase weight, when we gain weight, the levels of leptin in circulation increase, and the brain understands, okay, there is more energy available. And what the brain does is that it reduces appetite and then increases the basal metabolic rate. It increases energy consumption because the body is desirous of stability. What the body needs is a stable weight over the long term. And leptin is the key mechanism of regulating weight over the long term. When we gain weight, we increase the level of leptin in circulation. The brain interprets this. There is more energy available. So it takes steps. It reduces appetite. It increases energy consumption. That helps us lose weight. And then when we lose weight, the levels of leptin go down again. Then the brain interprets the lower levels of leptin as the energy stores have been reduced, then increases appetite and also reduces metabolism. It reduces how much energy we consume in just being alive. It is essentially trying to engineer weight gain. And that is why, even though we have an average weight over the years, let's say you have an average weight of 84 kg, but you will notice that your weight fluctuates around that set point. It's not really possible to be 84.0 kg every day. You will tend to be 82, 85, 83, 84, just fluctuating around that set point. But the average would be fairly consistent over the long term. And that fluctuation is the recalibration of leptin levels with appetite and energy consumption. And in runaway weight gain, there is a breakdown in leptin signaling. The brain becomes resistant to the information communicated by leptin, and that's what allows one to gain weight in a continuous fashion. So, what causes leptin resistance? Well, this is where junk food comes in, because refined carbohydrates and trans fats are major drivers of the breakdown in leptin signaling that eventually leads to overweight and obesity. For example, when we consume a refined carbohydrate such as table sugar, high fructose corn syrup, or white flour, these foods are digested rapidly and they release their sugar into the bloodstream. There is a burst of sugar into the bloodstream. And as the fat cells absorb that sugar in circulation and store it as fat, they secrete leptin. But abnormal levels of sugar from these refined carbohydrates also result in abnormally high levels of leptin. So you have a surge of leptin produced by these fat cells. And this occurs every time we consume a refined carbohydrate. We take a soft drink, there is a burst of leptin. We eat pastries made with white flour, there's a burst of leptin. We eat foods that are sweetened with all kinds of added sugar, there's a burst of leptin. This highly processed food diet creates these bursts of leptin. And over the long term, when we eat this diet for several months, several years, the brain becomes accommodated to abnormally high levels of leptin. And it accommodates itself by decreasing its sensitivity to leptin. It essentially tunes out leptin because it's like there is far too much leptin. Something is clearly wrong, so it tunes out leptin and you become leptin resistant. This is the universal precondition to becoming overweight and obese. Leptin resistance is the fundamental driver of this epidemic of overweight and obesity. And if we're able to resolve leptin resistance, then we're able to sustainably lose weight over the long term. So that's refined carbohydrates. Trans fats also play a critical role, but it's through a different mechanism. Trans fats, which is partially hydrogenated vegetable oil, disrupt leptin's action at the cell membrane level, because you have the hormone leptin and then you also have its receptor. This molecule leptin must interact with this receptor to communicate its signal to the cell, and then the cell adjusts its behavior. Trans fats interrupts this communication between the leptin molecule and its receptor, and between the receptor and the interior of the cell nucleus and other parts of the cell that information needs to be communicated to. So it disrupts the signaling. So with that being said, how do we resolve leptin resistance? Because once we resolve leptin resistance, then the body will take care of the rest. And the solution is not of reducing the quantity of foods. I think that has been demonstrated clearly enough by the diet industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's premised on this notion of reducing calorie consumption. But that is flawed, because you reduce calorie consumption for a while, you lose weight for a while, but then your biochemistry, which you can't really override, kicks in, and then you necessarily eat more, and then you gain that weight. So the issue is not reducing calories. It's all about the quality of calories and increasing the nutrient density of food, because it's these nutrients, eating high quality whole foods, that will resensitize your body to leptin. And once you resensitize your body to leptin, believe me, over months you will start to lose weight, and you will lose weight in a sustainable fashion. It's not that wild fluctuations of losing weight and gaining weight, losing weight and gaining weight. You will lose weight in a consistent fashion until you get to your healthy weight, to a healthy set point that the body desires. So, steps to resolving leptin resistance. The first thing is to avoid refined carbohydrates. That is your high fructose corn syrup. That is table sugar. That is white flour. And this class of food, refined carbohydrates, are in all manner of processed foods. And that is why from the 1970s, this obesity epidemic really took off, because our intake of high fructose corn syrup took off at that point. And there is a direct relationship between our consumption of these added sugars, such as high fructose corn syrup, and the rapid weight gain. So once we're able to avoid refined carbohydrates, for example, soft drinks are possibly the single most important thing to stop consuming. It's probably the single largest driver of the obesity epidemic, just because it's filled with refined carbohydrates that disrupts leptin signaling. So it's not so much the calories, but it's the biochemical implications of those calories, how those calories affect hormonal communications in the body, how they affect appetite regulation, how they affect satiation, how they affect energy consumption, how they affect our basal metabolic rate. So a calorie is not a calorie. A calorie also comes with a lot of other things. How does it affect communication in the body? And refined carbohydrates are disastrous for hormonal balance. In addition, we have to avoid trans fats, because trans fats, these partially hydrogenated vegetable oils, which in almost any processed food where you see vegetable oil, it's typically partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. That is chemically modified vegetable oil. That is liquid vegetable oil that was chemically converted into a solid. And the reason why they do this is because it extends shelf life. But trans fats are toxic, are corrosive, and creates all manner of health problems, of which leptin resistance is just one. So we really have to avoid processed foods. Additionally, we have to increase intake of nutrient-dense foods. And that is the key. It's not eating less food. It's all about nutrient density. And this just means eating a simpler diet, eating more legumes, such as your beans, your nuts, your pulses, eating less packaged foods, eating more fruits, eating more vegetables, eating more whole grains as opposed to these refined carbohydrates. So it's important to increase nutrient density of food, because it's the nutrients, it's the vitamins, it's the minerals, it's the phytonutrients that we get from nutrient-dense foods that resolves leptin resistance. So these are the first three interventions. Additionally, it's very important to increase intake of healthy fats. Because contrary to the conventional understanding, where if you want to lose weight, they tell us to eat a low-fat diet, fat, especially the healthy fats, which we get from foods like meat, eggs, that we get from avocados, that we get from coconuts, we get from coconut oil, olives and olive oil. Those types of healthy fats actually help the body become resensitized to the information communicated by leptin. They help to resolve leptin resistance. So increase healthy fat intake. And it's important to understand the distinction between these health-promoting fats and disastrous fats, such as trans fats, these partially hydrogenated fats, these processed foods fats. So the fat that you get from whole foods are essentially healthy for the body. Even saturated fats that have been demonized so much in the mainstream have actually been found to be health promoting. So once you go natural, all nutrient categories, carbohydrates, proteins, fats are good for you. But when you enter the processed side, these nutrients tend to be toxic, they tend to be refined, they tend to be chemical laden. So increase healthy fats. Another useful intervention is to prepare raw vegetable juice. And this is all part of that nutrient density argument. Raw vegetable juice. Because raw vegetable juice are loaded with so many vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, and all these nutrients help to restore leptin sensitivity. So you can be creative. You can use a green leafy vegetable such as spinach, tomatoes, carrots, ginger, and you can mix and match. Cucumber, you can use cabbage, because all these foods in their own respective way are dense in various vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. And you can find out the combination that you can best tolerate. But this is a very, very good intervention, because you get also raw enzymes, and because it's raw, a lot of those nutrients are not damaged, they're not yet modified. Because when we cook food and things of that sort, we lose a lot of these heat-sensitive nutrients. So this is a way to really provide your body with all that it needs to burn fat and to increase energy levels and to regulate appetite over the long term. Because this speaks the language that the body can understand. It speaks to your subconscious brain. These nutrients, they resolve the subconscious miscommunication that is going on, that is leading to that inability to regulate appetite, that inability to feel satisfied when even after eating. Because when you're leptin resistant, your brain essentially thinks it's starving. You could have eaten a lot of food, but you don't feel satisfied because the brain cannot hear what leptin is saying, that food has been taken into the body. The body still thinks it is starving. So you eat a meal and you don't feel satisfied. An hour later you eat again. 2 hours later you eat again, because the brain can't hear leptin, and the brain essentially thinks it's starving, so it upregulates appetite. Constitutively, it's not able to switch off appetite. Appetite is on, it's go, go, go all the time. And raw vegetable juice helps to resolve that disruption. Interestingly, exercise impacts leptin resistance through a very interesting mechanism. Exercise, typically we think of the calories that we burn during exercise, which is great. You know, you go for a walk, you burn 200 calories, great. Do that regularly to help you lose weight. But there's also a more fundamental process going on. When we exercise, no matter how mild, even just a walk, a brisk walk, or maybe resistance training, what it does is that it increases the number of mitochondria in your fat cells. Your fat cells are able to burn more energy even at rest. So the benefits of exercise go far beyond just what you burn during the workout, even at rest, because exercise increases the number of energy producing organelles, which is called mitochondria, in your cells. Your fat cells essentially burn more fat even at rest. So exercise is hugely important, and the important thing is just that any exercise is better than none at all. So start as slowly, as gradually as you like, and you will start to see benefits. In addition, it's useful to drink lime and cinnamon tea. Lime is a great source of vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients that help to resolve leptin resistance, and cinnamon has been shown in several studies to be a powerful agent in resolving leptin resistance. And you prepare lime and cinnamon tea by essentially having a cup of hot water, and you squeeze the juice of either 1 or 2 limes, and then you add a teaspoon of cinnamon, and you stir it and allow it to sit for maybe 5 minutes, and then you drink this. This is a useful supplement, and I would recommend it on a daily basis. In addition, fermented foods, because it's been found that gut bacteria help to regulate weight over the long term, and fermented foods are a powerful source of beneficial bacteria. So there is a gut profile that is associated with being obese. There is a tendency to have certain species of bacteria predominate in obese people as opposed to lean people. So, and a good way to get these beneficial sources of bacteria is by eating fermented foods, such as sauerkraut, even bottled olives, kimchi, kefir, yogurt. But I would qualify that with the following. A lot of these packaged fermented foods have been pasteurized, so most of the beneficial bacteria have been killed. But homemade fermented foods are probably your best bet. And a simple way to prepare one is what I call coconut slurry. So you take a piece of coconut, maybe 1/5 of coconut meat, maybe just this size. You maybe add a little bit of fresh ginger, maybe a teaspoon of finely chopped ginger and a teaspoon of finely chopped garlic, and you dump these 3 things, the coconut, the ginger, and the garlic, into a blender. You add like 50 cl of water, maybe a little less than half a liter, and you grind it all up, and you get a slurry. It's foamy, it's filled with particles. You put that in a glass jar with an airtight seal and allow that to sit for 24 hours at room temperature. You can ferment for much longer, but even after 24 hours, there is a large amount of beneficial bacteria, because only beneficial strains of bacteria can survive in that particular medium when you combine coconut, ginger, and garlic. So it's a great source of friendly bacteria that will also help in resolving leptin resistance through a different mechanism. So I hope you found this talk useful. Thank you so much for your time.